Hey there everybody, Mazrock here, and today I want to talk about trinket options for tanks. We're going to go over through a small list that I've compiled here, so I'm going to try and spend about 2 minutes per trinket on. I will leave some timestamps down below. Before we do get started though, please do like, comment, subscribe. Help that algorithm out. Thank you very kindly for all the support. There is a Patreon link down below if you wish to support me directly. Cannot do it without you, the patrons. There's a Discord link and a Twitch link if you want to join a wonderful community full of great people, or watch me stream live. Absolutely, you can do it. you can do that if you want to, because I stream. All right, so we're just gonna do these in like alphabetical order as per how I've kind of done these, not S to A tier or anything like that. And I want to avoid putting a tier label onto these trinkets because I think a lot of them have uses in specific departments or just whether you can get them or not, and sometimes a trinket might be better than it seems or worse than it seems. So I kind of want to go through. Now, I've used most of these trinkets myself. At least one of my tanks has these, has each and every single one of these except for one, actually two. But yeah, but I have looked at logs, I have talked to other tanks that use them and things like that, and I mean, trinkets aren't, they're not rocket surgery, right? And kind of get a glimpse if they're really, really good or not. But sometimes they can be a little weird. So, Blazebinders Hoof. This is a haste main stat trinket that has a 2-minute cooldown that will bind you for 20 seconds. It gives your attacks a high chance to increase your strength, stacking up to 6 times. When your binding is complete, you emit a burnout wave, emitting fire damage split between all parties based on the strength of your binding. So after 20 seconds, this is just straight up going to go off. But the more stacks that you have, up to 6, the more powerful that it is. This is actually a really kind of a secretly good trinket in disguise, especially if you're a spec that you're trying to get as much haste as possible, and it can be a struggle sometimes. I fully understand that. This is actually a pretty decent trinket to get for strength wearers that is going to deal okay damage by itself, but what's really important here is the strength stacks that you get along the way. So this is one where you can press it while on your cooldowns, and your cooldowns will get more powerful over that 20 seconds as long as they can last that long. But all around, pretty decent trinket. Don't be afraid to use this one if you need more haste. Bottle of Spiraling Winds. Now this is an agility trinket with a haste main stack. And what it does is it increases your stacks of agility every 2 seconds, which lasts for 25 seconds. This is a really, really nice trinket, and I've been using this in my Vengeance Demon Hunter. And it's got good uptime. I'm not going to say it's like the best trinket out there, but if this is what you have to run because you do need more haste, because Vengeance is one of those specs that just doesn't have a lot of haste naturally in their talent kit. Like, you know, Prot Warriors have Into the Fray, Blood Decays have Bone Shield for 10% haste. Like different specs have different ways of getting that haste. Vengeance doesn't, and this is where I really, really like it, and I still am using it over a 395 with the 395 plants me in place. So use what I can use, right? But the Bottle of Spiraling Winds is a pretty good trinket. The Decoration of Flame. All right. I think Blizzard is starting to drop the ball, or is scared to make OP tank trinkets, because the blood scale in Shadowlands was like one of the best trinkets for all tanks for a long time, and a lot of tanks really did try to farm that one out in the other side just complete, like all the time, me included. And what's funny is the Absorb Shield on the 272 blood scale that I have on my monk is about equal to the Absorb Shield on my like mythic Decoration of Flame. It's just a little bit less, and that's why I think they're kind of a little worried about making those OP tank trinkets that just give you a huge absorb. But all in all, this is a pretty decent defensive trinket. It deals fire damage, so it can proc the Aranog and Brood Rings if that's something that you so choose. The fire damage is actually okay in AoE. If you hit this off, it will deal respectable damage on a 2-minute cooldown, and it does give you the Absorb Shield, so if you're a little bit more defensively minded, this is not a bad option. Granyth's Enduring Scale. Now, this is another one on that list of, you know, why they're a little afraid to make those OP tank trinkets, or massive absorbs, because our health has definitely shot up a lot more. Since Shadowlands, now this is agility and strength, much like the Decoration of Flame as well, good for all tanks. But the Granyth's Enduring Scale is a random proc. You have no choice over it, so it does proc a little bit more, and it will increase your armor. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yes, it does increase your armor. It increases your armor while the shield holds, which is very nice because sometimes those absorb shields, you use them for big hits, but at the same time, the longer that you can make that shield last by increasing your armor by a little bit is actually pretty nice. And when the shield... so this is like a combination Shield of Enhilde's Aegis from Sanctum. When the shield breaks, it explodes, dealing damage. The damage is kind of minimal. Like, Decoration of Flame will definitely deal more damage for you in a run, but Granyth's Scale definitely does usually a little bit more healing. Like, it gives me a little bit more absorbs throughout the entire run, but all around, you get this in Naku Defensive off Granyth boss. So if you do want this trinket, you can farm that out there. This is one that I actually am glad to have. I solo tank Broodkeeper on Heroic, like I am on the boss the whole time, so I play more defensive trinkets, so I play this and Decoration of Flame at the same time. Where usually Mythic Plus, I operate under more DPS-minded trinkets. But this is will do some work for you if you are defensively minded. The Horn of Valor. Now this is a versatility main stat trinket that on a 2-minute cooldown will give you a nice primary stat buff, so you can use this either strength or agility, not a problem. This is about tanks, so there's no intellect tanks. If you're watching this video and be like, healers can use it too. Yeah, I know, but that's not what this video is about. Now, the thing with this one is it's actually a pretty decent trinket on its own. Versatility is a very, very nice stat to have, especially in Season 1, where some of our other stats might be lacking a little bit. So that's not bad, and the nice big increase in primary stats, strength or agility, is really nice on a 2-minute cooldown if you have the means to line it up with some sort of cooldown. For example, for Protection Warrior, I don't have anything that I can line this up with consistently and often on that 2 minutes without having to hold it for something. So it's a little wonky for me, but like say I was playing Bear, this is actually a trinket that I would like because my Incarn, I'm getting that down to about 2 minutes. If I have to hold it for a couple of seconds to get Incarn back, that's fine. But being able to prioritize this with Incarn and put them together, it just makes that cooldown a lot better. So if you do have the means, Blood DK as well. Blood DK likes their verse. You know, you can put this, you can slap this on with Slappy Hands. If you so want, our empowered rune weapon, you can just kind of use them both combined because those are always 2 minutes, right? So if you have the means to do it with a 2-minute cooldown, you can use this in it to powerful effect. But if you're just kind of hitting this without any cooldowns, you might want to look at getting some other trinkets. Manic Grieftorch. Oh, this is one of my favorites. I've been loving the Manic Grieftorch. My warrior got a heroic one, and this thing slaps. So this is a strength or agility trinket. You channel for 2 seconds. Now this is very, very important because this as a tank can get you into trouble. You do want to Grief Torch at optimal times because you obviously don't want to die. And I was noticing when I was first using this on Mythic Council, the Primal Council, we were getting some, Grief Torch procs, because whenever an ally dies, the cooldown of this is reduced by 90 seconds, making it a 30-second cooldown for a massive flame channel. I was doing it and I wasn't really paying attention because I wasn't, when I was tanking Primal Council, I was never dying. I was fine. So I was like, whatever, let's just go! I was realizing that you're not blocking or parrying or anything. Now, I don't know the full specifics on whether you can block, parry, dodge, or whatever, but I can tell you on Prot Warrior, you do not block, because that crush will crush you if you are using Manic Grieftorch, where if I am just kind of tanking it normally, it doesn't do anything. So I'm assuming that you're not actively mitigating when you are channeling this, but it does deal stupid amounts of damage, and if this is something that you can play around and use effectively, this will deal a lot of damage. On Mythic boss fights, on Prog, this has easily been 15 to 20% of my damage as Prot Warrior. In Mythic Plus, this is easily 8 to 9% of a 45k, 50k overall. So if you can get your hands on one, it's really, really good. But you have to use it effectively and make sure that there's no big hits coming before you use it because you don't want to die. Ruby Whelp Shell. Now this is one where, as time is going on in the season, we are actually learning that this is a pretty good trinket once you train it. This is a how to train your dragon trinket. There is a weak aura that I will link in the description box down below, because there are different procs and different effects, and you can train it to deal certain procs more often, like single target damage, AoE damage, and make those more powerful. Now, I think people are touting this to be a little bit better than what it actually is, even fully trained. But even then, I have seen some logs and I have seen some details, breakdowns, and things like that. And when trained, this actually deals respectable damage. It's pretty good. But it does require you to train the one thing over the course of 6 days, I think it is, 7 days, if I'm not mistaken, which is definitely a time sink if you want to do the single target and the AoE damage procs. So it's really up to you. I think there's a lot better trinkets up there, but if you take the time and you actually do train it, this can be a pretty respectable trinket option for you. The Rumbling Ruby off Taros. Now this is a strength trinket, which your attacks slowly build up concussive force, which grants attack power per stack. At 10 stacks, your next 3 melee abilities emit a shockwave in front of you, dealing bonus nature damage to all enemies in a line. The shockwave deals more damage to enemies at high health. Now this is actually a trinket where details is, if you look at a details breakdown, this is actually going to be a little deceiving, because you're going to see that it doesn't deal as much as some of these other damage dealing trinkets. But what happens is you're actually getting that attack power stack buff pretty much at all times. Now it does have an internal cooldown for how fast these stacks can proc to up to 10, but you always have them. So everything that you're doing as a paladin, blood decay, and warrior relies on attack power, so all of your abilities are getting buffed up by this. So pretty much all of the time, even if it's just a little bit. So your overall DPS will increase, even though that you might see the percentage of how much damage the shockwave is doing itself doesn't always seem like a lot, but your attack power buff is actually going to just give you a higher increased damage. Now this is kind of, for me, this is I've noticed this sims really high, but I don't think in practice it plays out to be that high. But I have noticed when I do use the Rumbling Ruby, my DPS for my other abilities goes up by a little bit more, and it's actually a pretty solid trinket when you kind of look around. It's passive, it just does its thing. Very, very nice. All around, give the Rumbling Ruby a shot. You might be surprised. The Spiteful Storm off Razageth. Oh, I like this one. I like this one a lot. This is strength or agility or intellect, but strength or agility tanks can both use it. This I have at 411 on my paladin, and this actually deals a chunk of damage. This is pretty respectful, and for me, where I'm happy on my paladin is in keys. Paladin single target isn't the greatest. Their AoE is really solid, but I find that some of their single target is lacking a little bit. This actually does shore that up, because upon expiration of the bolt, because you build up stacks of spite at 5, a storm bolt of arcs or whatever, it arcs towards your target for nature damage, blah, 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 blah. The damage will actually increase the longer that you're in battle, especially in single target, because it only has one person to arc to. So this, I notice, actually deals very respectable single target damage and shores up one of Protection Paladin's weaknesses for myself, because I'm playing a very AoE focused build. And honestly, on a 36k overall, this is pretty easily dealing about 8% of my damage. So I'm really happy with this trinket, and if you can get your hands on one, I think this is one that you might want to test around and work with, because it is basically just a DPS trinket, right? It doesn't do anything else. It's not going to give you armor or an absorb shield or anything else, but it passively deals a good chunk of damage. The Whispering Incarnate Icon. Alright, so, equip. You succumb to the Icon's Whispers, and you become infused with Frost. If you are a DPS class, I think it is Fire or Air. I think it's Air for healers, and it's Frost for tanks, because what this does is for every person that has this on, depending on your role, you will get a stat, and you will share that stat with everyone else that has it equipped. And for for tanks, it's versatility. For DPS, it's crit, and for healers, it's haste. So this is a really nice stat stick that works with the entire raid and not just the party. So this way you get to share your role stat, so versatility as a tank, with any healers and DPS that do have it equipped, and they do the same. All around, this is one of your better just straight up stat sticks because it gives you a nice chunk of a variety of stats, except for mastery, just passively. Very nice all around. This is actually an insanely good trinket that if you're using it in conjuncture with other people. It's kind of okay if you're the only one in a party. Like, it's going to give you a nice chunk of versatility for sure, but this gets amplified more when other people in the party are also wearing it. So, you know, if you have a healer, a DPS, and yourself as a tank wearing it, you're all sharing those crit, haste, and verse stats, which is really, really nice to see. And like I said, it is raid-wide and not just party-wide. So the Windscar Whetstone. This is a mastery stat trinket that on a 2-minute on use deals a huge chunk of bleed damage. This I actually do use on my warrior. I have it 411 right now, and honestly, this deals so much damage. It's really, really, it's one of the better DPS trinkets that you can use. Now, whether or not your spec likes mastery, like I am trying to get this for my paladin, because paladins really like mastery, so this is all around really good. It deals good damage, and I'm being able to stack mastery a little bit more. My protection warrior, I know they don't like mastery as much, but the amount of damage that it does is actually really, really good. So if you can get this one out of quarter stars, go ahead. You do have to be DPS spec, loot spec, to be able to loot this, but mind you, so if you're going into quarter stars, think about, you know, going into one of your DPS specs, looting as one of your DPS specs instead of looting as tank, because if you want this one, that's how you're going to have to get it. And lastly, we have the Windswept Pages out of Temple of the Jade Serpent. This is an agility trinket. So, bears, vengeance, demon hunters, and monks, you can go ahead and grab this if you want, although this really isn't that great for monks because it does increase your haste for 20 seconds. This has a decent proc rate from what I've seen. I have, you know, I've seen some logs and stuff where it has a very good proc rate. Unfortunately, I don't have this one yet. I would love this one on my bear and my vengeance, but womp womp is what it is. But yeah, so this has a nice agility main stat, and your attacks have a chance to let loose a flurry of mystic text, which increases your haste, and is a big chunk of haste once you start getting it in eye levels. So don't be afraid. Don't like if you're looking at the haste proc on screen. This is item level 39. It's a whole lot different when you start getting in the item level 400s. But this is an all-around great trinket if you're a haste-based class. So bears and vengeance, you would really, really like this trinket. So that is what I think about all the trinkets. From having tested and things like that, and because this has been asked for by quite a bit for people that are looking for those trinkets. I've always been a person that it's just because it's not this doesn't mean it's garbage. I have used pretty much all of these trinkets to good effects in certain times, depending on what I need to be doing. Do I need more damage? Do I need more passive damage? Do I need more on-demand damage? What do I just need to do, and what's going to allow me to be as tanky as possible and dish out as much DPS as possible. So I have used these to pretty good effect all around. There's still some trinkets that I want for certain tanks. Like I said, I would love a Spiteful Storm on my warrior, you know, things like that. So thank you very much for watching. Do you have any trinkets that got left off the list that, you know, you wish should or think should be on here for sure? There are some other ones. I just didn't feel they were good enough to be put on here. Not that they're total F tier, although there are a couple I would never equip no matter what. The Primal Ritual Shell should definitely get an honorable mention here. If you can get that one at 385, that one can actually do quite a bit of work for you, so that is something to think about. But I cannot do this video without my patrons. Thank you so much for all the love and support, everyone, and have yourself a good one. And tomorrow 10.0.5 comes out. Let's go! I'm really looking at seeing some of these reworks and how some of the tanks feel and things like that. So we're going to have 6 full, well, not full, but we're going to have 6 vaults. So we have all 6 tanks. That is right, Brewmaster is leveled and has been into keys. Yeah. All right, so thank you very much for listening, everyone. Have yourself a good one, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.